Hey Moon Jade family. Thank you so much for your love and support. Please like, subscribe, and share. It's a simple way to keep our stories coming. I couldn't do this without you. Thank you for being here. Now, grab a seat and let's continue the story. The bass of the rooftop lounge wasn't just music tonight. It was a warning, pounding through Sariah Cole's veins as she weaved between clusters of glittering guests, her tray of champagne flutes steady while her hands were anything but. This was supposed to be her night of triumph. The annual Jianyu Corporation Gala, the most dazzling event of the year, where fortunes were flaunted and alliances sealed with a single handshake. A night she'd worked toward for 3 long, grueling years. But instead of excitement, all Sariah felt was the icy curl of dread at the base of her spine. She didn't want to leave this world, the job she'd fought for, the company that was finally beginning to see her worth. But if she wasn't careful, he would leave her no choice. Her plan was razor-sharp in its simplicity: keep her head down, survive the night, and above all, stay invisible to him. To Kael Jianyu, the heir to an empire, a man whose mere presence could silence a room. And the one person who could ruin everything she'd built with just a glance. Even now, she felt him without seeing him, an invisible tether pulling at her, taut and electric. Somewhere beyond the glittering crowd, he was here. Watching. Waiting. Sariah's chest tightened. If their worlds collided tonight, nothing would ever be the same. "Cole," barked her supervisor, snapping her out of her thoughts. "You're up next. The champagne for Mr. Jianyu and his private guests. Don't mess this up." Sariah nodded tightly, hiding her annoyance. "Yes, ma'am." She hated this particular work culture where they had to serve their superiors drinks first before they could enjoy any event. She lifted the tray, its weight grounding her nerves, and walked toward the private VIP section where Kale and the city's elite sat. Her heart thudded harder with every step, until she reached the glass doors. He was there. Kael Jianyu sat at the head of a sleek black table, his midnight suit tailored to perfection, his dark eyes like twin storms beneath the soft lounge lighting. His presence was magnetic, commanding the room without a single word. When his gaze lifted and landed on her, Sariah almost stumbled. For a heartbeat, the world shrank to just the two of them. "Champagne, sir," she managed, her voice calm despite the chaos in her chest. Kale's eyes lingered on her face a fraction too long before he inclined his head. "Thank you, Miss Cole." His voice, smooth, deep, with a hint of steel, curled around her like silk. She set down the drinks quickly, desperate to escape, but one of the high-profile guests intercepted her. "You should join us for a toast," the man said smoothly, already pouring a flute and offering it to her. "To a successful year." Sariah's polite refusal was ready on her lips, but Kale spoke first. "She's off duty after this," he said, his tone deceptively mild. "One drink won't hurt." Their eyes met again, and something dangerous flickered in his gaze: curiosity, maybe, or challenge. Against her better judgment, she accepted the glass and took a small sip. The champagne was sweet, the bubbles sharp against her tongue. Too sharp. Minutes later, heat flushed her skin, spreading through her body like wildfire. The room tilted slightly, her thoughts growing hazy. Sariah clutched the edge of the table, panic rising. "What's happening to me?" Kale's sharp gaze snapped to hers instantly. "Miss Cole." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. He was already on his feet, his chair scraping back. "Something's wrong." His voice was clipped, urgent. "We're leaving." He guided her out of the lounge with surprising gentleness, his hand steady at the small of her back. The cool night air outside hit her like a splash of water, but it wasn't enough to cut through the fever roaring under her skin. Sariah swayed, clutching at his shirt. "Kale. I." Her knees buckled. He caught her effortlessly, his jaw tightening. Someone had spiked the drinks. He knew the signs instantly, he'd seen it before at hostile corporate events. Rage simmered beneath his calm facade, but right now, Sariah was all that mattered. He took her to his private penthouse, a towering glass and steel sanctuary above the city. The moment they entered, she clung to him, her breath ragged, pupils blown wide with confusion and desire. "Please," she whispered, the single word a desperate plea. Kale froze. He was a man of iron control, a strategist who calculated every move, but that control fractured as her trembling hands slid up his chest, her eyes filled with raw need. "You're burning up," he muttered, half to himself. "We need to." "Don't leave me," she breathed, cutting him off. "Just
Stay. Please.
Her lips brushed his jaw, and whatever restraint Kale had left snapped like brittle glass. The kiss was fire. Years of suppressed longing he hadn't even realized he carried ignited in an instant. He lifted her, her legs wrapping around his waist, and carried her to the bedroom. Clothes fell away, replaced by gasps and whispered names. It wasn't gentle. It was urgent, consuming, inevitable. Every touch burned, every kiss demanded more, until the line between them dissolved completely. For one night, there was no CEO and employee, no rules or regrets. Only two people caught in a storm they couldn't fight. Hours later, Sariah lay tangled in the sheets, Kale's strong arm draped over her waist as he slept beside her. The city lights glimmered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, indifferent witnesses to their ruin. She traced his jaw lightly, her heart aching. This was a mistake, a beautiful, unforgettable mistake. When dawn broke, she would be gone. Because if Kael Jianyu ever knew what this night meant to her, she would lose everything. Sariah smoothed the front of her navy blazer, though her hands wouldn't stop trembling. The pristine glass walls of Jianyu Enterprises gleamed beneath the morning sun, reflecting the relentless drive of the company's empire. Employees moved briskly through the lobby, their faces blank, their voices hushed. No one paid her any mind. To them, she was just another junior project manager. To Kael Jianyu, their enigmatic CEO and her boss, she was, what, exactly? Her stomach knotted at the thought. A mistake. A single night she could never undo. It had been a week since that night. A week since the gala, when his dark, magnetic gaze had held her captive and his touch had turned her carefully controlled world into chaos. Sariah had woken tangled in silk sheets in shame, her heart pounding, Kale's warmth lingering beside her. She had fled before dawn, terrified, of him, of herself, of what it all meant. Now she sat rigidly at her desk, staring blankly at her computer screen while nausea curled through her for the third time that morning. But it wasn't just guilt making her sick. There was another, more terrifying possibility. Sariah?
Hey.
Her best friend and coworker, Tommy, peeked over the partition, her brows knitting in concern. With her vibrant box braids and bold lipstick, Tommy was a splash of color in the company's sterile corporate atmosphere. "You look pale," Tommy said, lowering her voice. "Like, really pale. Girl, are you okay?" Sariah forced a brittle smile. "Just tired. You know, late nights working on the Zhang project."
Uh-huh.
Tommy crossed her arms. "And the morning sickness? The way you keep running to the bathroom? That's not just fatigue, babe." Her eyes widened suddenly. "Oh my God. You're not, are you pregnant?" The word hit like a thunderclap. Sariah froze, panic flooding her veins.
Sure.
"Don't say that out loud." She grabbed Tommy's hand and dragged her into a nearby conference room, slamming the door shut. When she finally found her voice, it trembled.
I don't know yet," she admitted.
"But my cycle's late.
I've been nauseous for days."
And there's no one else it could be, Tommy." Realization dawned in Tommy's eyes.
"Wait.
"You mean, him? Your boss? Kael Jianyu?" Sariah's face burned with shame. She buried it in her hands. "It was a mistake," she whispered. "I didn't even plan to go to that gala. But he was different that night. Softer. He looked at me like I wasn't just another face in the company. Like I actually mattered." Her voice cracked. "I've never felt like that before. But to him, it was just one night. A lapse in judgment." Tommy sat beside her, stunned. "Sariah, this isn't just some guy. This is Kael Jianyu. The Mun owns half the city. If he finds out," she trailed off, the implications too heavy to finish. Sariah's chest ached. "I can't stay here, Tommy," she said finally, her voice hollow. "I have to resign before anyone suspects anything. Before he suspects anything."
"But you love this job.
You work so hard to get here." "It doesn't matter anymore," Sariah said firmly, though her hands trembled. "If Kale finds out, he could ruin everything. He has the power to take this baby away from me, to bury me under his wealth and influence."
Tears pricked her eyes.
"I won't let that happen."
Tommy hugged her tightly.
"Whatever you decide, I'm with you. Always." That afternoon, Sariah slipped an envelope into HR's drop box, her resignation letter. As she walked away, her chest felt like it was caving in. This is the only way, she told herself. Leave quietly. Disappear before it's too late. But fate was merciless. As she stepped into the elevator, the polished steel doors began to slide shut.
And then,
Sariah. Her breath caught. That voice was unmistakable. Deep, commanding, and far too close. She turned slowly, heart hammering. And there he was. Kael Jianyu. His dark eyes burned into hers, unreadable and intense. And from the dangerous edge in his tone, she knew he wasn't here for business. The elevator doors slid shut behind them with a soft metallic hiss, trapping Sariah in a confined space with the one man she most wanted to avoid, and couldn't seem to escape.
her throat went dry.
Mr. Jianyu, she said stiffly, retreating a step. I didn't realize you were.
Stop.
Kale's voice was a command, low and sharp. The muscles in his jaw flexed as his eyes swept over her flushed face, her trembling hands, the fear she couldn't quite hide. His gaze dropped to the slim envelope peeking from her handbag. What's in the letter you just left with HR? He asked, voice dangerously calm. Her heart stuttered.
He saw me?
It's nothing, she said quickly, clutching her bag to her chest. Just paperwork. Kale took one step forward. Then another. The air between them grew taut, suffocating. Don't lie to me, Sariah. His tone softened, but the steel beneath it was unmistakable. You're resigning, aren't you? Sariah's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Kale's dark eyes narrowed, frustration flashing in their depths. You think you can just disappear? He demanded, his voice rising. After that night? The unspoken words hung between them like a live wire. Sariah flinched, hugging herself tightly. It was a mistake, she whispered. We were both drunk. It meant nothing. The muscle in Kale's cheek ticked. Nothing? His voice dripped with disbelief, and something rawer, darker. He moved closer, his towering frame overwhelming her senses. You think I can just forget the way you looked at me? The way you felt in my arms? Kale, please, she begged, her voice trembling. Don't make this harder than it already is. His breath caught at the sound of his name on her lips, soft and pleading. He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his burning gaze. You've been avoiding me since that night. I gave you space, Sariah. I thought you just needed time. His voice dropped to a harsh whisper. But resigning? Walking out without a word? That's not time, that's running. Her eyes filled with tears. Maybe running is the only thing keeping me safe. The pain in her voice sliced through him, but Kale didn't let go.
What are you so afraid of? He asked, searching her face. Me? Yes.
The confession ripped out of her before she could stop it. You terrify me, Kale. You have all this power, all this control. If you knew the truth, you'd destroy everything I've built. He froze, shock flickering across his features. The truth. Sariah's lips parted, her secret hovering dangerously close to the surface. But before she could answer, the elevator chimed and the doors slid open to the executive floor. Kale didn't release her. Instead, he grabbed her wrist, gentler than his tone, but unyielding. You're coming with me, he said, dragging her toward his private office. Kale, no. She struggled, her voice rising in panic. You can't just. I can, he snapped, glancing back at her with an intensity that left her breathless. And I will. Kale's office was a sleek fortress of glass and steel, overlooking the sprawling city skyline. The door clicked shut behind them, sealing them away from the rest of the world. He released her wrist but didn't step back. Instead, he circled her slowly, like a predator stalking prey. You've been on edge for weeks, he said, his voice deceptively soft. Avoiding me. Hiding something. And now you're resigning. I need to know why. Sariah stared at the floor, her chest heaving. If I tell you, it will change everything, she whispered. Then let it. His hand slid beneath her chin, tilting her face up to his. I don't want lies between us, Sariah. Just the truth. Her resolve crumbled under the weight of his stare, his closeness. Memories of that night flooded back. The heat of his touch, the way he had worshipped every inch of her as though she were the only woman in the world. Her body betrayed her, swaying toward him. Kale. His name escaped her lips like a prayer, and suddenly his mouth was on hers. The kiss was nothing like she remembered. It was rougher, hungrier, laced with frustration and longing. Sariah gasped, gripping his shirt, caught between desire and despair. Kale deepened the kiss, his hands spanning her waist, pulling her flush against him. "You feel this too," he growled against her lips. "Don't deny it." "I can't." Her words were muffled by another fierce kiss. When they finally broke apart, both of them breathless, she turned her face away. "This is exactly why I need to leave," she whispered. Kale's chest heaved, his eyes dark and tormented. "You think running will protect you," he said bitterly. "But I'll find you, Sariah. Whatever you're hiding, whatever you're afraid of, I'll uncover it." That night, Sariah sat alone in her tiny apartment, staring at the unopened pregnancy test lying on the counter. Her hand shook as she picked it up, her mind replaying Kale's words. "I'll find you." Tears blurred her vision as she whispered to the silent room, "Please, don't let it be his." But deep down, she already knew the truth. She was carrying Kael Jianyu's child. And nothing would ever be the same again. The morning sunlight streamed through the blinds of Sariah's apartment, but there was no warmth in it. Her entire body trembled as she clutched the thin white stick in her hands. 2 pink lines. Clear. Undeniable. Final. After she saw the test results, she had waited till the morning to do another one, hoping it would show something different even if she knew better. Her breath hitched, and a sob tore free. No, no, no. Her worst fear was now reality. She wasn't just pregnant, she was pregnant with Kael Jianyu's child. Her mind spiraled as she sank to the bathroom floor. She had planned to disappear quietly, to leave the city before he noticed she was gone. But now? There was no running fast enough. He'll find out. He always does. Later that day, Kale stood in the middle of his office, tension radiating from him like a storm about to break. For days, he hadn't been able to focus. Sariah's trembling voice, her panicked attempt to resign, her haunting words, "If I tell you, it will change everything." His gut screamed that something was wrong. Very wrong. When his assistant entered, Kale's head snapped up. "Find out where Sariah went after work last night," he ordered. "And keep it quiet." The assistant hesitated. "Sir, is this a personal matter?" Kale's eyes narrowed dangerously. "It's my matter. That's all you need to know." As soon as he was alone, he grabbed his phone, thumb hovering over Sariah's number. He wanted to demand answers, to hear her voice and strip away every lie between them. But before he could call, the intercom buzzed. "Mr. Jianyu," his secretary said nervously. "Your mother has just arrived, with a guest." Kale froze. His mother. Which meant trouble. The doors to the executive suite burst open, and Madame Liyah Jianyu swept in like royalty, her perfectly styled hair gleaming silver under the lights. Behind her trailed a striking young woman with delicate features, soft curls framing her heart-shaped face. Kale's stomach dropped. "Kale," his mother exclaimed, her voice warm but commanding. "You didn't tell me you were this busy. I've brought someone very special to see you." His gaze flicked to the woman beside her, and ice flooded his veins. Liyah. His childhood friend. His almost first love. Liyah's lips curved into a soft, practiced smile. "It's been too long, Kale." Kale's jaw tightened. "Why are you here?" Madame Jianyu beamed, entirely missing, or ignoring, the tension in the air. "Because it's time, son. You focused on business long enough. Liyah has returned from overseas, and I've decided to arrange your marriage." The words hit Kale like a blow. "Marriage," he repeated flatly, disbelief turning to fury. "Mother, no." "Kale," Liyah said sweetly, placing a hand on his arm. "We were always meant to be. Our families planned it years ago." He ripped his arm free, his voice like ice. "My life isn't a business contract." Madame Jianyu's smile faltered. "Kale, I'm doing this for your future. You need a proper wife by your side. Someone who understands our world." Proper wife. The words echoed bitterly in Kale's mind, his thoughts flashing to Sariah, her laughter, her strength, the way she'd looked at him the night they'd surrendered to each other. A wave of anger surged through him. "I won't marry Liyah," he said firmly. "And you have no right to make that decision for me." She was opened her mouth to say something else, but before she could speak, her phone lit up with a message too urgent to ignore. "We will see about that," she hissed angrily, storming out of his office with Liyah. Sariah paced the length of her tiny living room, panic clawing at her chest. She hadn't heard from Kale all day, which should have been a relief, but instead, it terrified her. "What if he already knows?" she whispered, pressing a hand to her flat stomach. A sharp knock at the door made her jump. When she opened it, she froze. Madame Jianyu stood there, elegant and intimidating, with two sharp-eyed attendants behind her. "You must be Sariah," the older woman said smoothly, her eyes flicking over Sariah's trembling frame. "May I come in?"
Sariah's throat went dry.
"Oh, of course." Madame Jianyu stepped inside, her gaze sweeping the modest apartment before settling back on Sariah.
"You work for my son," she said calmly.
"I've heard interesting things."
Sariah swallowed hard. Yes.
"I'm his assistant." "And yet you tried to resign yesterday." It wasn't a question. Sariah's legs nearly gave out. How does she know? Madame Jianyu studied her for a long, tense moment, then her sharp eyes softened unexpectedly. "You care for him, don't you?" Sariah's breath caught. Before she could respond, Madame Jianyu's gaze dropped to Sariah's stomach. Her eyes widened, and in that instant, she understood. "Oh," she whispered, her voice strangely tender. "You're carrying his child." Sariah's world tilted. "No, please, don't tell him." But Madame Jianyu simply reached out and took her trembling hands. "My dear, you've been through so much alone.
I can see it in your eyes.
Whatever mistakes were made, you are family now." Sariah stared at her in shock. You don't hate me?" "Of course not." Madame Jianyu's lips curved into a rare smile. "I only want my son to be happy. And my grandchild to be safe." Relief flooded Sariah's chest, but it was short-lived, because behind Madame Jianyu, another figure appeared in the doorway.
Liyah.
Her beautiful face twisted with barely concealed rage as her gaze swept from Sariah to Madame Jianyu, then down to Sariah's stomach. "So this is the woman," Liyah said coldly. "The one who's been keeping Kale distracted." Sariah's blood ran cold. Madame Jianyu turned sharply. "Liyah, this is none of your concern." But Liyah's delicate mask cracked, fury seeping through. "No concern?
He was supposed to be mine.
We were supposed to be married." Sariah took a step back, her hands instinctively protecting her stomach. Liyah's voice dripped venom. "You think you can steal him from me? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Madame Jianyu moved protectively in front of Sariah. "That's enough, Liyah." But Sariah could see the promise of war in Liyah's eyes. This wasn't over.
Not by a long shot.
Kale stared out at the glittering city lights, his mind consumed by Sariah. By the secret she was hiding. By the memory of her lips on his. Then his phone buzzed. A message from his mother. "Come home, Kale. We need to talk. It's urgent." His stomach twisted with unease. When he arrived, he found his mother waiting with a strange, unreadable expression. Before he could speak, she said softly, "Kale, you're going to be a father." The words hit him like a thunderclap. His breath caught, his heart pounding wildly. "What?" His mother smiled gently. "Sariah is pregnant. With your child." For a moment, Kale couldn't breathe. Then the storm inside him exploded. "Where's she?" he demanded, his voice a harsh growl. "I need to see her. Now." But in the shadows of the grand hallway, Liyah watched, her eyes gleaming with hatred. If Sariah thought this was her happy ending, she was very, very wrong. As Kale stormed out to claim the woman and child who were rightfully his, Liyah's cold smile spread. "If I can't have him," she whispered, "then she'll wish she never did." Sariah sat on the edge of her bed, her hands trembling as she clutched the soft scarf Kale's mother had left behind during her visit earlier that afternoon. Madame Jianyu had been nothing like she expected, warm, attentive, and surprisingly tender as she spoke about taking care of Sariah and the baby. It was overwhelming. Sariah hadn't planned to tell anyone about the pregnancy so soon, but Kale's mother had found out during her visit, her sharp eyes missing nothing. The older woman's kindness had been genuine, but it only deepened Sariah's confusion. She didn't know what to do, what to think, or how to handle the storm that was surely coming. The sudden, forceful knock on her door startled her. Before she could get up, the door swung open, and Kale filled the frame, his chest heaving as if he had run all the way here. "Sariah," he breathed, his eyes burning with a mix of anger, worry, and sheer desperation. "Kale." Her voice cracked. She stumbled to her feet. What are you doing here? You didn't tell me. His voice was low, strained, almost breaking. My mother had to be the one to tell me you're pregnant. Sariah froze. Guilt and fear twisted inside her. I wanted to, Kale. I just didn't know how. Everything between us happened so fast, and No, he crossed the room in 3 long strides, cupping her face in his hands, his touch trembling. You don't get to push me out of this. You don't get to carry this alone. His eyes flickered down to her belly, then back to her face.
This is our child, Sariah.
And I will not let you run away from me again. Her breath caught. I wasn't running away, Kale. Tears spilled over before she could stop them.
You're my boss, Kale.
And now there's this baby, and your life, and your family. I don't want to ruin everything for you. His jaw tightened, his expression darkening. Ruin everything? You and this baby are the best thing that's ever happened to me. Her heart stuttered at the raw conviction in his voice. Kale pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. Come with me, he whispered against her hair. Not to my apartment, but to my family house. My mother insists on caring for you herself, and, his voice softened. I want you close to me.
Close to us.
Sariah hesitated. She'd met Madame Jianyu once, and though the older woman had been kind, the idea of living under the same roof terrified her. Kale, are you sure? This isn't just about us anymore. I'm sure, he said fiercely. And anyone who has a problem with you will answer to me. Moving into the Jianyu family estate felt like stepping into another world. The sprawling house gleamed with wealth and tradition, intimidating in its grandeur. Madame Jianyu greeted Sariah warmly, taking her hands and ushering her inside with a proud smile. You'll be safe here, she promised, glancing knowingly at Kale. I'll make sure of it. For a brief, fragile moment, Sariah allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. Until she saw her.
Liyah.
The woman was stunning, her elegance almost cutting. She stood at the base of the sweeping staircase, lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. So this is the woman I've heard so much about, Liyah said smoothly, her gaze raking over Sariah from head to toe. I must say, Kale, you have interesting taste. Sariah stiffened. Kale's grip on her hand tightened.
Liyah, this is Sariah.
His tone was clipped, warning. Sariah, this is Liyah, a family friend. Family friend? Sariah's stomach churned. The way Liyah looked at Kale told her there was far more history between them than that. Over the next few days, Liyah's true colors began to show. She was sugar-sweet whenever Madame Jianyu was around, but the moment they were alone, she turned venomous. One morning, Sariah walked into the sitting room only to have Liyah casually shove a priceless vase off the table. It shattered at her feet.
Oh, dear, Liyah gasped dramatically. You really should be more careful, Sariah.
Imagine if Madame Jianyu thought you broke it. Sariah clenched her fists, swallowing back tears. When Kale returned that evening, he found Sariah sitting quietly in their room, her eyes red. He knelt before her, gently taking her hands. What happened?
Nothing, she whispered.
It doesn't matter. Kale's eyes narrowed. He'd seen that broken vase on his way in. And he knew exactly who was responsible. Liyah knew that the only way she could win was if Sariah decided to leave Kale on her own, and she planned to push her to do just that. The next morning, Liyah cornered Sariah again, her smile sharp.
You don't belong here, she hissed. Kale is mine.
His mother has always wanted us together, and you, she glanced pointedly at Sariah's belly. You're just a complication. Before Sariah could respond, a deep, dangerous voice cut through the air. Liyah. Kale stood in the doorway, his expression like thunder. Liyah froze.
Kale, Enough.
His voice was cold steel. You will treat Sariah with respect, or you will leave this house. Immediately. Liyah's face twisted with rage, but she forced a brittle smile. Of course, Kale. I was only joking.
Get out.
She fled, seething, while Kale turned to Sariah, his hands gently cupping her face. I'm sorry, he murmured. I should have stopped this sooner. Sariah's heart ached with a mix of relief and love as she whispered, I was so scared, Kale. You never have to be scared again, he vowed. I'll protect you. Both of you. The Jianyu estate buzzed with a quiet tension in the weeks leading up to Kale and Sariah's wedding. Despite Liyah's poisonous presence, Madame Jianyu had been nothing but supportive of Sariah, taking her to prenatal appointments and personally overseeing every detail of the wedding preparations. It was overwhelming, but for the first time in months, Sariah felt cautiously hopeful. Kale, on the other hand, had grown more protective by the day. He rarely left her side, balancing his duties as CEO with his role as father-to-be and soon-to-be husband, pushing their wedding to the earliest date possible. Madame Jianyu had supported him, wanting her first grandchild to be the legitimate heir without questions. Sariah was just glad that her feelings were mutual, going along with all the preparation in spite of the inconveniences her first trimester brought. But beneath his calm exterior, he was planning something only a handful of trusted people knew about. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Sariah stood before a full-length mirror in a soft ivory gown, her dark skin glowing against the delicate lace. Her hair was swept into a simple yet elegant updo, and a thin veil cascaded down her back. Madame Jianyu entered, her eyes misting with emotion. "You look breathtaking, my dear," she said warmly, adjusting a stray curl. "Kale is going to lose his mind when he sees you." Sariah smiled nervously. "I still can't believe this is happening." "You deserve this happiness," Madame Jianyu said, squeezing her hands. Then her voice lowered. "Don't let anyone take it from you, not even Liyah." Sariah's stomach tightened at the mention of Kale's former love. Liyah had been strangely quiet the last few days, which worried Sariah more than her usual games. As Sariah walked down the aisle, every fear melted away. Kale stood at the altar, his sharp black tuxedo making him look like a king. But it was the way his eyes lit up when he saw her that nearly brought her to tears. When she reached him, he took her trembling hands in his steady ones, grounding her. "You're perfect," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The ceremony felt like a dream. Their vows were simple but deeply personal. "I didn't know what love was until you," Kale said, his voice strong and sure. "You gave me a reason to fight, to hope, and to build a future I never dared imagine. I vow to protect you and our family, no matter what it takes." By the time Sariah repeated her vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the room, including Madame Jianyu, who beamed proudly. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, Kale kissed Sariah with a reverence that made the room disappear. The reception was lavish, filled with laughter, music, and dancing. For a while, Sariah allowed herself to forget the hardships that had brought them here. But as the evening wore on, she stepped out into the gardens for some air, only to find Liyah waiting for her beneath the lantern-lit trees. "So, you've won," Liyah said coolly, her beauty marred by bitterness. Sariah stiffened. "This isn't about winning, Liyah. It's about love."
Love.
Liyah's laugh was sharp, mocking. "Kale and I were supposed to be together. His mother promised me. Do you think a ring and a baby will keep him tied to you forever?" Sariah's hands clenched at her sides. "I don't care about promises made in the past.
Kale chose me.
That's all that matters." "You'll regret this," Liyah hissed, stepping closer. "Both of you will." Before Sariah could respond, Kale appeared, his expression dark with fury. "Leave," he ordered, his voice cold as ice. "You are no longer welcome here, Liyah. My family, my wife, and our child come first. Always." Liyah's face crumpled, her mask finally breaking. With a choked sound, she fled into the night, disappearing like a ghost. Sariah trembled, and Kale immediately pulled her into his arms.
"She's gone," he murmured.
"She can't hurt you anymore." But deep down, a sliver of unease lingered. Several weeks later, Sariah rested in the nursery Kale had built for their baby, her hand absently rubbing her growing belly. Kale entered quietly, wrapping his arms around her from behind and kissing her shoulder. "Almost ready for the next chapter of our lives," he said softly. She smiled, leaning back into him. "As long as you're with me, I'm ready for anything." For the first time, Sariah truly believed it.